Today I want to talk about Sony acquiring more studios. We know it's something that is going to happen, at least most of us assume that that's the case. Sony's went on record throughout this year saying that they're looking into acquiring studios, and we recently found out they picked up Insomniac Games, which honestly I think came as a big surprise to most people. There are some people who actually believe that Insomniac was already owned by Sony, which is totally understandable, but for those who are in the loop, I think it came as a surprise because Insomniac really kind of just came off as the type of studio that was not really interested in being acquired, and yet here we are. Now, there's one studio in particular that I'm sure many of you are thinking of that I want to really kind of focus on in this video, and that is Remedy Entertainment. And the idea that Sony has possibly already acquired this studio and we just have yet to learn about it. And if that's not the case, then I think it is likely that we are going to see Sony end up trying to acquire them very soon. I think there is a decent amount of evidence that points to this, but there is also one big thing that does point to something actually saying the opposite. There's something that happened recently with some of the owners of Remedy Entertainment that really kind of points to the idea that maybe they haven't been acquired and they actually aren't going to get acquired. So really this is just a very speculative video, but we know that Remedy just released their new game Control, which I did pick up and I've played a little bit of it so far, and I'm liking what I played, and it seems that a lot of people are really enjoying Control. It's reviewing really well. The Metacritic scores, I think, across the board are in the low to mid 80s, which is very solid. And overall, it just seems like a game that has all of the potential to be a success. And when we talk about Remedy being acquired by Sony, something I see mentioned pretty frequently is, well, if Sony is going to actually acquire Remedy, maybe they're going to wait to do so. They're going to wait to see how this game Control performs, not only with reviews, critically, but also commercially, sales-wise. And I think that that is actually a pretty safe bet to maybe kind of assume that Sony isn't just going to dive in headfirst with a studio like Remedy, because Remedy has proven that they are very capable of making good games, but they've been a little bit, hit or miss at certain times, and they just haven't really proven that they are on the same level as a lot of the studios that are underneath Sony right now. But I think the important thing to focus on with Remedy is how the potential is certainly there, and because they are independent, maybe they just don't get the necessary funding and they don't have the resources or the money, I guess we could say, to really expand to that extent, to be able to really fully flesh out their potential. But if you look on Twitter, when Control released, something that we've seen happen a lot actually throughout the entirety of this year, but more specifically with the release of Control, is a lot of Sony's first-party studios in particular really going out of their way to personally congratulate Remedy Games. And this is something that a lot of you were paying attention to, and I did tweet about this, and that tweet got a pretty decent amount of attention. I pretty much just said how I really feel that Sony has already acquired Remedy Games and we just don't know about it, because the way that Sony's first-party studios are interacting with Remedy, it really does come off as something that you would only see them doing with their other first-party studios. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to make it sound like Sony studios are the only ones out here congratulating Remedy, because that's not the case. The truth is, plenty of people have congratulated Remedy. Even Phil Spencer congratulated them. So does that mean suddenly that Xbox has bought up Remedy? No, it doesn't. And I'm not trying to get too far ahead of myself, but there are a few clues that really kind of point to the relationship between Sony and Remedy being taken to another level. It started with Guerrilla Games, and Guerrilla Games had tweeted out, a congratulation to our friends at Remedy Games, and there was a picture, and in this picture there was a note that was left, and some people actually highlighted this note and zoomed in on it, and it says, "Thank you for all the help along the way, Remedy." And a lot of people were kind of looking at this thinking like, wait, Guerrilla Games was helping out Remedy? Is this true? A Sony first-party studio helping out with a third-party game doesn't seem like something that happens very often, if at all, and that was certainly interesting. But we also saw Media Molecule and even Insomniac Games all congratulating them, and some PlayStation executives. And I'm not saying that, that just suddenly means that Remedy is now a first-party studio because of that. No, I'm not trying to say that, but we do think back to earlier this year when Shuhei Yoshida was paying a visit to studios. We know that he took time to visit Remedy, which the thing about this is there's a lot of people who, or at least some people, who try to make it sound like, oh, that's not a big deal, but you have to understand it is. You know, Shuhei Yoshida is an executive at PlayStation. He's not just going to take a trip across the world to visit a studio like Remedy just to pop in and say hi. That's not why these things happen. There's definitely something going on there. We just don't know what exactly. But even more interesting is we know that some people who work at Remedy, some of the higher-ups there at Remedy within the studio, actually took time to go visit, I believe, Naughty Dog and Insomniac. And what was interesting is when they at the time that they went to go visit Insomniac Games, we didn't know that Insomniac was going to become a first-party studio. For all we know, Sony was already in the process of acquiring them during that time. Maybe that's why they were talking about it. Maybe that's why they were visiting them specifically. At the time, we knew that they were just a second-party relationship with Sony, but now we know they are a first-party studio. Something else that we do need to look to when it comes to Remedy games as well and the release of Control is how there is there's actually a Twitter page called PlayStation Jobs, and I saw some people pointing this out as well, where when Control released, PlayStation Jobs seemed to have tweeted out a few times anyway that apparently they were looking for people, a business planning manager / development manager, and referencing Control and using images of Control, and they kept using the hashtag Control Tuesday, and they put multiple posts out. And this again could be nothing, but it really is starting to seem like Remedy is getting very, very close to Sony, and they're really starting to bring something together here. Now, if I had to take a guess as to what's happening, well, before I do that, I actually do need to mention something I referenced in the beginning of this video, talking about that one piece of information that really kind of points to maybe nothing actually happening between Sony and Remedy, before I forget, because I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. Recently, a few of the owners of Remedy Entertainment actually sold the majority of their shares, which is usually not a good sign. And I was looking into this, and I'm not, really familiar with how this stuff works, but from what I've looked into, it sounds to me that when this happens, it's usually not a good sign. They're kind of cashing in, and they're selling the majority of their shares, and I think that their stock fell and whatnot. And a lot of people were kind of saying that, this wouldn't really make much sense. It wouldn't make much sense for them to do this at a time like this if Remedy is in fact going to get acquired, or they are in the process of getting acquired. If anything, they would hold on to those shares and wait, because undoubtedly Remedy would become more valuable after they are owned by Sony, thinking along those lines. So this is one factor that really makes me kind of rethink my stance on the fact that Remedy actually may already be acquired or is going to get acquired. Something that a lot of you have also pointed out that I think is also a very realistic possibility is that maybe instead of an acquisition, because that is pretty extreme if you think about it, maybe they just worked out an exclusive deal for next generation. And we know that Remedy Games now has the publishing rights to Alan Wake. We know that it's something that they've been wanting to work on throughout all these years, and something tells me that going forward they're going to want to work on a sequel to Alan Wake, and I think that there's a lot of fans out there who would be very excited for that. And who knows, maybe they struck a deal with Sony where they say, hey, we want you to make an exclusive game for us next generation. You will have our funding, you'll have our backing, you'll have our resources, but it needs to be exclusive to the PlayStation consoles. And maybe they agreed on Alan Wake 2 or something new. That is also a distinct possibility here. We do have to understand that, Sony has tried to buy Insomniac Games in the past after working with them for a while, so maybe Sony wants to try to get a really strong relationship going with Remedy before they consider acquiring them. But I don't know. There's just a lot of signs here that point to something happening between Remedy Entertainment and Sony and their studios. And, again, seeing just how friendly they're being with Sony's first party, seeing this little note that implies, now it might, we might be taking it too literally here, but it certainly implies that Guerrilla Games helped out to some extent, right? We know that Kojima Productions and Remedy Entertainment, they're getting closer. They're becoming more friendly. There's been a lot of speculation if Sony's going to try to acquire Kojima Productions next. Maybe they already have. Maybe they're planning on doing so after Death Stranding releases. Maybe they're waiting to see how Death Stranding does. Maybe that's exactly what Sony's doing here with Control. It's really hard to say. We don't know. We can only go based off of what we're seeing. We can only speculate, and it's going to be interesting to see if anything more comes of this. There was actually some talk going around that Sony's going to save the announcement, similar to what they did with Insomniac Games, to where they're going to wait until Xbox is doing something just like they did recently at Gamescom with Gears, and Sony decide to be pretty savage about it and say, hey, we're going to steal the spotlight by announcing that we acquired Insomniac Games through a tweet, not even going on stage and announcing it, just kind of showing just how much, how much weight they hold within the industry, where they just have to put a tweet out there and suddenly it's like all the attention's on them. Maybe they could do something similar later this year with Remedy Entertainment announcing they acquired them. I was speculating if Sony really wanted to be a real savage, they could wait until Microsoft's XO19 event and just announce it then, because man, that would really be something, wouldn't it? But again, it's all speculation. We're going to have to wait to see. Something I can say for sure, though, is that Remedy Entertainment and Sony are getting awfully close to one another. So are Sony's first-party studios, getting very close, very comfortable with Remedy. And it seems to me that there is something going on here. We're just going to have to wait to find out what it is. If I had to put my money on it to say my final piece here, I think there's still a very good chance that Remedy Entertainment could have already been acquired or is going to get acquired by Sony very soon, regardless of the owners selling their shares. I was actually looking into it, and apparently there's might be some investigation going on there for some like insider trading or whatever. And I don't know anything about that, but that's what I read. So we're gonna have to wait to see, guys. Let me know your thoughts about this down in the comments below. I'm gonna be interested to see what you guys have to say. Leave the video a like if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Hit the bell notification icon so you never miss a video, and feel free to share this video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.